I am Shorty. I'm the oldest of the siblings, 2 years older than Karen. I was born in 1948, and Karen was born in 1950. I'll take just a few minutes, perhaps. I see that the genetics of our grandfather Feasel passed through Karen, has landed on Chris and Jeff. They've never been accused of being brief in the first place, but they've upheld the tradition very, very well. Long weddings, long prayers, long Bible studies, and is he ever going to stop kind of thing. And it's interesting because a number of things that both Chris and Jeff said, I was going to say in almost exactly the same words. I was going to start out, and it's written right here, that this is the part that we don't like. We like weddings, we like new children, we like birthdays, we like holidays, we like vacations, we like all of it. But this is the part we don't like, and yet we know, don't we, that this is part of God's plan. And as Jeff said, we don't have to like it, but it is the way it works. Our parents, and the scripture says that as humans, we're trying to look into the future and understand what God's plan is. And it does say, doesn't it, that we look kind of like through a glass darkly. We're trying to see what is it that's there. And we have different ideas based upon different scriptures, and we have maybe some doctrinal differences, but we all kind of clearly know that there is something, and this life is not the end by any means. We were 5 siblings in our family. I was the oldest, Karen 2 years younger, our sister Susie, not here today, living in California, is a couple years younger, and then our brother David is here, and then our little baby sister Vicky. She and her husband Chip are here. David and Jan are here. Susie is not, and my wife was not able to come. I'm going to abbreviate some of this because if I can and if I do, we should be out by 7 or 7:30, something like that. I want to maintain the tradition, say, as well. Karen and her husband had been in the ministry for quite a lot of years, and after they graduated from college, and as has been pointed out, that divorce occurred. And I have always admired and appreciated Karen for the very same reasons that Chris and Jeff both mentioned, and that is that some would become bitter, would become angry, would be very unforgiving, would be very angry with God. Why me? This isn't fair, etc. And Karen set a remarkably beautiful example of accepting a challenge that she didn't need or want, but it happened, and with a gracious spirit navigated those new waters. Fortunately, in some ways for her, we grew up on a farm out in West Texas, and I was going to mention the stepping on your head meant it was close to lunchtime, and one of the favorite expressions was from our dad, that it didn't matter if you could step on your head or not, you had to hoe to the end of the row, which was language for chopping out weeds out of the cotton crop. As part of the family culture, sewing had always been a significant thing in our family. I remember so well my grandmother and friends from her church with quilts that they were making. And this is before a long arm quilting machine. This was a roll, wooden frame with a roll, and they would sit and quilt and quilt and quilt and visit and talk, have a good time. And Karen learned that from her mother, from her grandmother, and she always knew how. Quilting, cross stitch, embroidery, sewing notions, and when she was then required to do so, she worked at several things, but first I think was Prim Dritz up in Greenville, Spartanburg area. And then after, I don't know how many years, but 12 years ago, she connected with Handy Quilter, and I'm not going to repeat what the boys already said, that was a wonderful blessing to her, and I think she was a wonderful blessing to them as well. She first worked in sales up and down the East Coast, from Florida, Georgia, all the way either into or through Virginia, going west, I think as far as Tennessee maybe, and down toward Alabama, including Georgia, and I'm not sure the exact territory, but she did that for a number of years and then ended up in as a working in training, and she excelled at that and loved it. She really, really loved her job. Our parents passed away, our mother in 2005 and our dad at age 94 in 2015. One of the legacies, and a significant one that we will remember and try to pattern ourselves after, was Karen's love for family. And one of the really neat things was that for the last 8 years, she sponsored her children and her grandchildren to go to Myrtle Beach for a week. And that was a huge priority to her, that they make that trip, that they are together, that they are family. And I don't know, but you can be sure she gave up things that she might like to have had for her home or her life. But that was a significant and important thing. And it matched very, very well with the Handy Quilter philosophy and worked well together. So I could go on, but I would like to just conclude, I guess, by saying, although we can't see as clearly as we want to see, we have a lot of clues, we have some hints, we know what Jesus said, but we're looking through that glass darkly. And for those of us who are the siblings, it's tough and it's hard, because it's now our generation, it's now our group, and that's tough. And it seems untimely a bit, a little too early, but here it is. What I would say is, Jeff and Chris, you guys have a clear vision of what your mom was, what she emphasized, what was important to her, and you're teaching that to your children, and that's marvelous. You'll always remember that legacy that your mom set, and your grandchildren will as well. And so while we're sad and we don't like this part, the truth is that we certainly had a wonderful example to emulate, and as we go out, we must resume life, but we can do so with a picture maybe of what was more important or less important about life, and kind of set a scheme of priorities that we hold to, and in so doing, remember our mother, our sister, our grandmother, Carol.
Well,